Hey folks, welcome to the channel. In this episode, we're going to set up this 10-bolt GM rear end with all new stuff. New carrier, gears, bearings, you name it, it's going in. Well, let's get to it. If you haven't been following along on this build so far, let me just tell you what we got. We got a 10-bolt GM in a 1978 Nova 9C1 police car that we are restoring. So, how do we know this is a 10-bolt? Well, it's got 10 bolts around the cover on the back of the diff. It also has the ears at 5 and 7 o'clock. That also tells us it's a 8.5-inch rear end. The ring gear will also have 10 bolts holding it to the carrier. Now, if you have a 12 bolt, it should have 12 bolts. Most cases, the cover will also have 12 bolts as well. Now, 8.5, you can tell that by measuring from one side to the other on the ring gear. This is a 308 gear set. We know that because it's all labeled on the gears themselves. Why are we doing what we're doing? Well, this car has a lot of miles on it, and when we got in there and started inspecting things, the gear wear is just, it's off the charts. The bearings, you know, lack of fluid changes, things like that, and high miles, and it being a police car, things are just wore out. So bearings are shot, gear patterns. We also had a ton of slop in the spider gears in relation to the side gears. A lot of things just not going our way. So instead of, you know, trying to rebuild this stuff, we went ahead and bought all new stuff. And here's the parts we're going to be installing today. We got our brand new 308 gear set, a carrier, and everything we need to install. Now we're going to need some special tools, so let's check those out real quick. Now, as far as some of the special tools you're going to need to do this job, and I get it, not everybody's going to have this stuff in their garage or toolbox at home. Some of this stuff you might be able to borrow from your local auto parts store. Other things you might be able to pick up at Harbor Freight, like I did. This race and seal installer kit, this came from Harbor Freight. This is about $35, $40. We got a bearing splitter here. Again, Harbor Freight, about 30 bucks. We're going to need a clicker style foot-pound torque wrench. We have a beam style inch-pound torque wrench. We have dial calipers. We got to be checking thickness on shims. The other tool here is the dial indicator. This is important. We use this for backlash. Now, I bought a special tool from Ratech. This is going to help me figure out pinion depth. So we're going to give this a shot. Never used this before. There's other ways to check pinion depth. We'll get into that as we go. The other thing is you're going to need your information. So I picked up this little book online, Amazon. It's pretty informative, pretty cool. You can sit down, you know, in your easy chair, kind of peruse this guy and get familiar with things before you really dive into it. Now, service manuals, shop manuals, that's going to give you all the info as well. All right, guys, we're about to start installing things, but before we do, we need to understand what pinion depth is. Now, pinion depth is the center line of the ring gear. So we're dead center right here, right here. See that yellow line? We install the pinion gear like so, like it would be in the car. Now, the distance from here to this yellow line is your pinion depth. If this is not right, if we put this in wrong, you know, say too far in, too far out, we're going to have noises, we're going to have premature wear, we're going to be wasting a lot of money, and it's going to show itself real quick. So how do we adjust pinion depth? Well, what you do is you add shims here in between the gear and the bearing, and when you mount it in the housing, it puts it right where it needs to be. Now, how do we figure out exactly where it needs to be? I've got our original pinion gear here with its bearing. Underneath the bearing, there's a shim right there. It's a little tough to see, but we're going to remove this bearing. We're going to use a bearing splitter and a press, and then we're going to get the shim out of here. Now, try not to destroy this bearing. We're going to reuse it. You'll see why in a second. All right, guys, we got the bearing off the old Pinion gear. Went pretty easy. Went a little too easy, and it looks like just because of how old this guy is and miles and heat, this race was actually spinning on the gear. I wouldn't say spinning, it would move probably periodically. And what that ended up doing was grooving this shim all up. It kind of looks like a record. It's really made this shim not usable anymore. I took some measurements. We got 30 thousandths, 29 thousandths, 27 thousandths, so it's shot. A lot of kits, when you're doing this, they'll say, you know, start with what it originally had, install the gear, and go from there. What we're going to do is a little different. I've got this Ratech tool here. We're going to be trying this guy out, so I'm not going to put any shims on our new Pinion gear just yet. What I did do was I took our old bearings, the one that went here and the one that goes up here, and I rounded out the race. And I did that because we're going to use these as checker bearings. So since I rounded that out, it will just slide right onto this Pinion gear. Now that's, you know, that's not a permanent install. We can put a shim on there, slam the bearing on there, put it in the car, take this bearing, just slips right on, tighten everything up, and then we take our measurements and see where we're at. If we're too far away, then we can take everything apart real easy, put the right size shims in, reassemble it, go back to the car, recheck it. So that's why you try to save this bearing, so you can just do what we're gonna do. I've got a little brake clean on a rag. I'm just making sure this is clean again. Got my race tool, my new race. We're gonna set this guy right here. Our tool. Now, when we bottom out, you will hear the change in pitch. There it is. Guys, the Harbor Freight tool didn't come with a installer that was quite right. So I went ahead and used a brass drift and went around the outer edge, being very careful not to slip, and seated it about 95%. And then I went ahead and took my aluminum installer that was pretty close and sent it home. So we're good to go. I'm happy with that. You just don't want to scratch out in a race. All right, when it comes to the ring and pinion sets, they'll usually have a number on the end of the pinion that's going to give me, you know, a tolerance. Well, they didn't put one on this one. So we're going to use Ratech's website. Yep, Ratech. This is the tool that I bought to check pinion depth. So we're going to go to their website and see how they say to do this, especially if we don't know the tolerance on the on the pinion gear. Okay, we're on their website. Number one, we measured the thickness of the pinion head. Now we're going to subtract that dimension from the number listed below for your application. So we have a 10 bolt, 8.5, 27 spline, coming up with 4.262. So we're going to take the number we got, subtract it from this. That'll give us our checking distance number. So step number one is we're going to measure the thickness of the pinion head. And that's the gear part. So we're going to go from where the shim would sit to the face. Use this little micrometer. I've calibrated this guy up. What I'm coming up with is a 1.688. 1.688. I've checked this in several different spots on the gear. It all jives. It's all the same. 1.688. All right, so we took our pinion head, 1.688, and we subtracted it from the number on their chart, 4.262. That gives us a checking distance number of 2.574. I'm going to save that number. Move on to the next step. Next step, then take my my new pinion, put my checker bearing on it, put it in the housing. That bearing. Take my yoke, put that on. We're not putting a seal and we're not putting a crush sleeve in yet. I'm gonna take my washer, or for my Pittsburgh friends, washer. That on. And then my nut. Now what I did with this nut was I ground its retaining capabilities off as I throw it on the floor. That way it just slips on and off, pretty easy. And what we're gonna do is just snug this up. We're gonna get the slop out of the pinion. Doesn't need to be super tight. Okay, spins free, no back and forth movement. Okay folks, what we're going to do is take our Ratech tool. It has a little plastic button, kind of pokes through on the back side of it. We're going to center it up in this little hole in the pinion, and then this little arm is going to go over and kind of set on the face of the axle tube. So it looks like that. See how there's the face of the tube. It's not in the tube, it's right here at the edge. And then there's a hole in that arm where we take a dial caliper and go through here, through this little hole, and we take a measurement. Now what you got to be careful of is your pinion gear. Make sure it's free of debris and nice and flat. Now what I just noticed is a little chunk of slag or something right there. I'm going to have to sand off just real quick because it's causing my tool to rock just the tiniest bit, and you know that little tiny bit matters. So let me clean this up, take a measurement. Now take our tool, position it like so. I'm holding it with my left hand, got my caliper zeroed. I'm going to go through the hole here. I'm going to check this several times. I'm coming up with 5/16. Guys. 0.516 is my number I'm coming up with. All right, we have the 516 is what we got in our measurement. Now you subtract that from the number on the tool, which is a 3.129. So we subtract the number on the tool from the 516, we get the 2.613. So let's take 2.613 and subtract 2.574, the number we got over here, and that gives us 39 thousandths. So that's where we're going to start as far as shims are concerned. And hopefully we're close. All right, so we're saying 39, but none of these numbers are going to add up to 39. So what we're going to do is we're going to get really, really close. We're going to make sure this is clean right here. It is. We're going to take an 019, an 011, and an 010, and that's going to give us 40. And throw a checker bearing on there. Let's give that a shot. All right, I've got the pinion put back in the housing. We're going to move on. We're just going to go over to the carrier. We're going to put the bearings on it and the ring gear. And we're going to set that up in here. Once that's set up, we'll paint the gear. We'll run it through a few times. We'll see where our pattern is at and see how much we need to add or subtract. We'll see. Hopefully we're close. If there was a number stamped on the end of this gear, things would be a lot different, guys, believe me. But right now, we're all kind of learning together, so we'll see what happens. These are the cards we're dealt. Guys, look who decided to visit while I was installing these gears. See you later, bud. Oh no, he's gonna cross the road. Whoo, just in time. I got the carrier gently mounted in the vise. It's not gonna move. See the padding here so things don't get messed up. Gonna put the ring gear bolts in. Now these are lefty tighty, righty loosey. Go ahead and start one. I put some red thread locker on this guy. My instinct is just to turn it to the right, but you know. Get one started on this side, go to the opposite side. That one started. Just going to use this to assist. Set our torque wrench to 40. Don't forget to turn your torque wrench to go the other way. Okay, now we're going to go up to 80. 85, I said. We'll do 85. All right. I got some bearings in the oven. Let's go check on that. Well, if you don't have a press at home, I understand, but you can go to Walmart and you can buy a $20 toaster. Yes, as of October 2023, this toaster was $19.99 at Walmart. I got this thing set to $4.50 for like 20 minutes, maybe a little less, 15 will do you. Heat them up, heavy gloves, pull it out quickly, put it right on the carrier. Maybe have a brass hammer handy just in case you don't get it quite on there straight. You need to get it on there straight and it'll just fall right down. Done. All right, so installing the carrier, not a big deal. You take your bearing races, you put them on either side of your carrier. Then you're going to take your original shims, which look like so, put them on either side, and then try to install everything in one shot. Now, it doesn't fit. And the reason it doesn't fit is because this is a new carrier. The shims were for the old carrier. It's a little too tight. What you want to do is just take a micrometer. This is the left side, driver's side. Check this one. This is 0.245. The passenger side, you know, this is 0.239. Of course, these numbers vary depending on the vehicle and the housing. So what I'm going to do is just back off a little bit. We're going to make, you know, smaller shim packs until we can just get it in there. And let me show you these shims real quick. All right, guys, look at all the different sizes of shims for the side bearings there. We've got quite a variety. I went and mic'd every single one, put them in little stacks. It's easier to do the math. Like I said, one side was 245, the other side was 239. So what we're going to do is build packs that are probably, you know, 1,000th smaller on each side, and then see if we can get the carrier in there. Okay, I've got my carrier with its new bearings and the races, and I've got the shims in my hand as well on either side. I'm going to try to shovel this in here. There we go, it's in. Little trick, guys. Take a wrench, take one of your cover bolts, just kind of thread that in. That's a safety. That'll stop it from falling out and bash you in the forehead or the foot, breaking it, you know, having it hit the ground. Take our caps, these right into place. I'm gonna snug these, I'm not gonna torque them. Okay, you heard this. That is backlash. Now, what is backlash? That's a little bit of space in between this gear and the pinion. If we were rocking this guy back and forth and we had no movement at all, it's not making any noise, it's rock solid, that's zero backlash. That's not good. The gears are gonna heat up, you're gonna have problems. The spec is 5 to 8 thousandths of backlash, this little bit of play. We're gonna take a dial indicator and we're gonna check this guy real quick, but in order to set backlash, it has to do with the shim. So if we need this ring gear to go this way because it's so jammed up against, we're gonna add some shims here and subtract over here. So whatever amount we add here, we'll subtract here. So it's everything's equal. Now if we need it to come this way, we're gonna add here, subtract here. So say we add 1,000th here, we gotta subtract 1,000th here. So it's really 2 thousandths of movement. You catch my drift? But let's get the dial indicator. We'll see what we got. Here's our backlash measurement setup. We got our dial indicator here. This is a magnetic base. It's stuck to the housing. Got this little gauge here, little spring-loaded deal. So we're right on the edge of this tooth. And what we're going to do is just move the ring gear back and forth. So that's 0. That's 10. A little bit too big. We need to tighten things up just a little bit. So as we saw, we were at 10 thousandths, spec 5 to 8, so we need to add a little bit to this side, subtract a little bit from this side, try to tighten that up just a little bit. Okay, I did a shim change. Look at that, 0 to 5 thousandths. That is good enough for government work right there. Spec is 5 to 8, we're right on 5. It'll probably loosen up a little bit as this thing goes down the road. So we're gonna go ahead and stop there. I went ahead and brushed a little bit of paint onto the ring gear here in a few spots. We're gonna go ahead and just spin this guy around a little bit. Be able to check our pattern, see how close we are. All right, we're looking at our paint marks. They look pretty good. We're in the center. We're a little bit closer to this side than this side, which is okay because it's not gonna get any closer here. It's just gonna grow this way. What I'm gonna do next, and this seems a little strange, is I'm gonna take this all apart. I'm gonna take these caps, keep the shims, you know, in their locations, get this guy out of the way. And then we're gonna work on getting turning torque set up here and final install on the bearings on the pinion. Well, while we're waiting for our bearing to heat up, I'm gonna go ahead and install the other bearing. So we got our new bearing. I'm actually gonna pour some gear lube on this guy. Set him into place. Okay, it's not going to fall on me. Gotta get my seal into place here. My driver. All right. We're even all the way around. Looks good. I think we're about ready. Guys, don't get your bearings mixed up. This is our checker bearing. Took that off. Set that aside. Our shims are on there. Took a little bit of gear lube. Put it around the shaft here. That way, if it goes down a little cockeyed, the lube will help it come down flat. So, let's see if we can get lucky again. Let that cool down and we'll install it. Dare I say it, it's our final install. Got the gear with its new bearing. It's cooled down. Don't forget to put your crush collar on. Through the back. Come on, guy. All right. Got our yoke. Washer. Our brand new nut. I'm going to use an impact to help this thing along, but we're not going to use it for final install because there is a turning torque to this. We'll get to that in a moment. Now this is where our inch-pound torque wrench comes into play. We're looking for 15 to 30 pounds of turning torque for new bearings. That's closer to 5, so we got a little ways to go. What we have to do is we have to hold the yoke and tighten the nut, which is not super easy. So there's different ways you can hold this guy. Now, you can take a pipe wrench, put it on there, put a pipe on the end of the pipe wrench, and wedge it against the body of the car, whatever works. I happen to have this crazy tool that just kind of fits right into the strap bolt holes and should hold this guy. So I'm wedged up against the spring. And you want to do this in small increments, and be careful, you're going to be putting a lot of pressure to this guy. Okay. I'm going to spin this around a little bit. Okay, now we're at like 10. Baby steps, guys. All right, looks like I'm right at 30. So we lucked out. Feels good. Let's go ahead and reinstall that carrier. All right, rechecking our gear pattern. Looks pretty good. So we're gonna go with that. Let's keep on trucking. Okay, we're moving on to axle seals and bearings. Not too bad. You can dig this seal out of here carefully, pry it out, and then or slide hammer with like one of them hook deals on it. And same goes for the axle bearing. You're going to need a slide hammer for that as well. I'm going to try to take both out at the same time. I've got a slide hammer with this cool little adapter that I believe Harbor Freight does have. So it goes in, turns this way, you lock this nut down against everything, and then just, you know, pound it out of there. Gotta get that guy grabbing. Wind this down. Okay. Let's just go ahead and dig that seal out of there, and then we'll try again. Just like that. Yeah, I guess it's best to go ahead and dig the seal out of there and then remove that wheel bearing. Again, not sponsored by Napa here, but that's who I get my parts from. Wheel bearings. Part number R1563-TAV. Readily available, guys. Don't have to special order. Go ahead and kind of set him in place. There's a shoulder on the inside, so this thing will only go so far. It'll go in and it will stop. Axle seal. SKF makes these, again, readily available. Part number 13992. Just kind of stick that in place. If you're careful, you can just take a hammer and just kind of start it. Beautiful. Looks great. All right, we need to get those axles in, so that means this little 5/16 bolt has to come out of the carrier. Look at that, in one piece, unlike last time I was doing this. There we go. Now we got to slide the pin out. Pull this guy out carefully. Now we can see, put our axles in, we'll put our C-clips on, good to go. So as you can see, I cleaned up these axles. One thing I did when I disassembled was I labeled them, driver's side and passenger side. This piece of tape here has got a P on it for passenger side. You want to put these axles back where they came from. Just going to peel my tape off here, put it in the housing. Be careful of that seal. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of oil, put it on the end of the shaft here so it doesn't roll that seal. Okay, we're in. We're going to come over here to the diff. You can see the end of our axle sticking through in there. We're going to oh so carefully slip this C-clip into place. I'm holding it. I'm going to grab the end of the axle and pull that way. And now we are good. We just got to do the same thing on the other side. Then we can put the pin back in and the 5/16 bolt. Okay, smeared a little bit of oil in the end here. Very carefully. Don't want to grab that seal. I'm on the seal a little bit. I'm just being real gentle with this until we get it into place. There we go. Find our C-clip. Okay, got it into place. Just going to grab the end of my axle, like so. Okay. You don't want to be in there prying too hard. I was just persuading it a little bit to get into place. Now we're going to roll our carrier slowly back this way. Get our pin. Put him back into place. And put our bolt back in. I went ahead and put a little skim coat of gray RTV. Doesn't hurt. You don't have to, but these cork gaskets, paper gaskets always make me leery, so I just put a little dab on there. It's holding the gasket for me nice. Might put a little bit on the cover itself too. Went ahead and cleaned up our magnet, put that back on. A little just skim coat of RTV, like I said. I'm gonna just kind of set this in place. All right, fluid goes in here until it comes out the hole. We're using 80 W90. I have a limited slip additive we're gonna add to this. What I'm gonna do is put half a bottle of this in. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my additive. I'm gonna pour it into the rest. This bottle. It's just easier to put it in that way, I think. But you be the judge. I'm gonna go ahead and fill this up. Well, we are all together and ready for the road. No, we're not, because we're in the middle of a restoration. If you're just joining us, check out some of the other videos. Maybe consider subscribing. This is a very cool car. Anyways, guys, took me about 9 hours putting things together, taking it apart, adding shims, putting it back together, remeasure. You're going to do that. It's the nature of the beast with one of these guys. So be patient, be prepared. Watch some other YouTube videos out there. Haggerty has a good video on rebuilding a 12 bolt, which is the same thing, just bigger and beefier. His pinion depth measuring was a little different. Works the same in the end. As long as that gear pattern looks good on the paint, you should be good to go. So with that being said, guys, you have a good one. I will see you later.